The ballot or the bullet, freedom or death. We gas ourselves up, but we short on breath. Talking about we eating, but who we really cooking. Dreaming about greens, but ain't nobody looking. No land, no acres, no seeds in the ground. When the hunger hits, who's gonna be around? We starving every day, and it just ain't the food. Feeding the hood garbage, got 'em acting a fool. We flossing with rides, stunting with chains, but these bars we spitting just bring more pain. We guilty as hell, preaching all these lies, selling debt to the kids, and we acting surprised. We commercialize the pain, broadcast the grief, tell the youth to hustle, but hide the beef. We glorify the trap, invite them to the flames, just like Reagan brought the crack on planes. Back in the 80s when the streets got soaked, my people, my brothers, all got choked. Reagan said no trades, but we know the deal. He left us in the dirt, man, that shit was real. I was just a shorty watching it unfold, old enough to see how we got sold. War on drugs, but it was war on us. Cops on our necks, no love, no trust. They labeled us thugs, beasts on the block, made us kiss the pavement while they cleaned our clock. Prison became business thanks to Reagan's game. Free labor's the truth in America's name. Slavery's dead, man. That's just a word. Read the 13th Amendment, it's still absurd. They lock us in cages, serving time for life. Double digits for wisdom, cutting sharp like a knife. I'm here to say, the chains in the air, it's time we break free, start showing we care. No more flexing for nothing, no more selling out. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. And this morning, I'm going to be talking about law and disorder in America. But before we get into all that, here goes Don Tripp, Odds Don't Lie, and we'll be right back right after this.
Yeah. Sometimes we be blinded by our idea of who a person is or who you want them to be. You be so blind, you don't really see who they really are. If that makes sense. Yeah. I'm embarrassed, dog, I can't believe my eyes. Time to switch it up, cause niggas switching sides. You a bitch, can't even look me in my eyes. I blame myself because I should've seen the signs. I blame myself because I peeped it in your vibe. Should've grabbed my scissors, it was time to sever ties. Time to step away from you, I need more than space from you. Niggas be quick to take from you, but hesitant to take the truth. I had high hopes, I thought you were one of us. I should've knew something was up back when we was coming up. I would break my back to get you half, and that just wasn't enough. When it's time for you to split the pie, I'm always undercut. Break my heart, never mind your foes, gotta watch your bros. I might even shed a tear before I wipe your nose. I never imagined you not with me down this road. When it rains and it pours and true colors start to show. I'm embarrassed, dog, I can't believe my eyes. Time to switch it up, cause niggas switching sides. You a bitch, can't even look me in my eyes. I blame myself because I should've seen the signs. Yeah, it's up from here, but hey, at least I tried. I can give you everything I have, but not a spine. Funny how you hit me every time you in a bind. But every time I need you, you impossible to find. Yeah, it's fucked up when you gotta crop your dog. Got the picture, he too focused on the frame. He don't even see the vision, he's so greedy that it's sickening. Although I'm no mathematician, I can see it clear as day. Best solution is division. I'm embarrassed, dog, I can't believe my eyes. Time to switch it up, my nigga switch sides. You a bitch, can't even look me in my eyes. I blame myself because I should've seen the signs. I'm embarrassed, dog, I can't believe my eyes. Time to switch it up, cause niggas switch sides. You a bitch, can't even look me in my eyes. I blame myself because I should've seen the signs. I blame myself because I peeped it in your vibe. And the eyes don't lie. I blame myself because I peeped it in your vibe. Yeah. And the eyes don't lie. Yeah. And the eyes don't lie. Yeah. Yeah. And the eyes don't lie. Long live Bill.
That was Don Trip. Eyes don't lie. There's a few things that I want to talk about this morning, and then I'm probably gonna look in to see how far in city council in Minneapolis, because there is something that I do want to talk about when it comes to there. Um, and then, but first, we're gonna talk about DHS and how it says they won't comply with the federal order, or what they've DHS says it won't comply with California's ban mask on officers.
Well, in a nutshell, it comes down to the following question. Can state government approve a law telling federal officers what they can and cannot do, or in this case, what they can and cannot wear? The Trump administration says absolutely not.
We will not comply.
Acting U.S. Attorney Bill Asaley, on behalf of the Trump administration, sending that message loud and clear to Governor Gavin Newsom, just days after the governor signed a bill to prohibit law enforcement officers from covering their faces during most operations in California.
We're just not going to put up with it.
Asaley echoing this post from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, stating California does not have the legal authority to enact or enforce a state law directing federal officers how they can operate.
They have absolutely no jurisdiction. They have no say over the affairs of the federal government. They don't get to tell us how to do our job. That's not how this works.
SB 627, the anti-masking law. Thank you.
During his signing ceremony Saturday, Newsom said the legislation is in response to federal immigration operations statewide.
ICE, unmask. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Provide an ID. Tell us which agency you represent. Provide us basic information that all local law enforcement is required to provide.
And he asked the question, what are they afraid of? Well, I'll tell you what they're afraid of. They're afraid of being doxxed. They're afraid of being followed home. They're afraid of being confronted at their homes. They're afraid of their family members being accosted and assaulted.
Newsom was asked whether he believes the state legislation can apply to federal officers. His response?
The Supremacy Clause doesn't give blanket immunity to state laws. Quite the contrary. I'll give you just as an aside, an example. Federal employees have to abide by traffic rules.
Most rights are left to the states. But when we are dealing with law enforcement of the federal government, those are subject to the whims and the dictates of the federal government, not the states.
And important to note that California Highway Patrol was specifically exempt from this law. As for federal law enforcement, even if they do not comply, local law enforcement will be required to. The law takes effect next summer.
That's kind of crazy. And I think as more and more as we go on, you'll start to see police departments. And I know they want to ban masks, but, you know, in the culture that we're in, the society that we're in, doesn't leave that. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're either, the same thing, we came to basically a four-way stop when it comes to politics, right? We can either stop and just keep on going through, or there's a lot of people that go through and don't care what they actually do. And I think we're at a impasse in life where, and actually not in life, in society, that people either need to stand up and do something or just keep on living your lives, because what people can't be in and then out, because that doesn't work anymore. We're in times where people would rather get on law enforcement and yeah, they're just not. Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff. Next, I want to talk about how I have NBC or Care 11, not NBC, Care 11, and how pretext stops in Minneapolis, actually not just in Minneapolis, in Hennepin County, can affect. Here's an argument of why it shouldn't be. Or it should or it shouldn't, I guess.
This is Breaking the News Plus on this Wednesday evening. Tonight, I want to talk about an issue that has really divided people over the last several days since the announcement was made by Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty that her office was not going to take up anything that comes from a pretextual stop. Now, I know a lot of those words can seem confusing, so we'll get into that, but we'll do so with my guest, Dr. Yahuru Williams with the University of St. Thomas. Dr. Williams, you and I have talked about politics and race and law many, many times over the years. Thanks for coming on tonight.
My pleasure. Good to see you, Jenna.
So I brought you on tonight because you just wrote an opinion piece in the Star Tribune, and it's titled, Mary Moriarty Got It Right. Pretext Stops Are Biased and Ineffective. And that stems from her decision to do what? Why don't you just explain that out of the gate?
Well, what Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty has decided to do is stop prosecuting these low-level pretext stops. And these are stops that are not conditioned or warranted by officers' knowledge of a crime, but suspicions about the potential based on factors that have nothing to do with the behavior of the driver. And so they can be pretext stops that are for broken taillights, for example, or other things that aren't major crimes, but that ultimately, particularly in Black and brown communities, are the source of a lot of consternation around issues of racial bias and racial profiling. These are the types of stops. And in my article, I talk about the controversial and tragic killing of Philando Castile, where he was stopped by officers on that day simply because he fit the profile in the officer's mind of a criminal person, a person engaged in criminal activity. And it's that type of bias and those types of stops that Mary Moriarty was seeking to root out in this decision by Hennepin County.
And it's, to be fair, let's note, because I've been here a long time, Ramsey County started doing this several years ago. I don't know that it met as much of a fiery criticism online as what Ms. Moriarty is going through right now. But Ramsey County, John Choi, decided to do the same thing, I think in 2021. And let's talk about the results Ramsey County saw. Can you talk about that?
They were phenomenal. In fact, what Ramsey County saw and what John Choi was very courageous in making that decision, of course, he was making it in a very different moment. And so this was post the murder of George Floyd. There was a great deal of conversation around police reform and how do we make traffic stops in particular safer? How do we better marshal the resources of police to deal with real serious crime and not these low-level violations? And how do we root out some of the bias and some of the complaints that were coming from community around pretext stops, and which were basically amounted to Black and brown people as harassment, forms of harassment. So John Choi took a look at this, looked at some of the things that were happening in other parts of the country, Philadelphia most notably, and some other communities that instituted similar reforms and believed that they could have the same benefit here in Ramsey County. They implemented it and the numbers have borne that out. And so we haven't seen diminished productivity in terms of police. We haven't seen, what we have seen are less complaints around this type of harassment. And certainly when Mary Moriarty made the courageous decision to push this forward in Hennepin County, it was with the knowledge that this has been very successful in Ramsey County, very successful.
Yeah, I think you noted in your op-ed some numbers from Ramsey County. The stops fell by 86% after this, a 66% drop in the number of stops of Black drivers, and the number of firearms confiscated in that time just remained the same. So showing that the pretext stops stopped, but they still were able to recover firearms and find criminals in other ways rather than just this type of thing. Now, Dr. Williams, it's not lost on anybody watching this conversation that you are a Black man. And so the skeptic watching saying, oh, there's a Black man saying that this is only happening to Black and brown people, but the data bears out that that's who it happens to at a pretty high rate, correct?
Absolutely. And it's been my own experience, Jana. Unfortunately, I wrote or talked a couple of years ago about being stopped in New Jersey on what was effectively a pretext stop. this is a wound that communities of color, persons in community of color know intimately. And when you look at the data and you realize that in fact it doesn't make communities safer, that it's an irritant, that it's a pernicious form of racial bias, and that you have people like John Choi and Mary Mority willing to look at the data and make data-informed decisions about policy reforms that make us all safer, I think that all adds up to what unfortunately amounts to a controversial, but actually a courageous and a very smart decision for Hennepin County.
Yeah, there have been other counties' attorney and other members of law enforcement, including the Hennepin County Sheriff, DeWanna Witt, who is also African American, saying what Mary Moriarty has chosen to do is a problem. This is bad. It makes crime worse. How do you argue against that when you have a sheriff saying that, who is also African American?
I'm a big fan of DeWanna Witt. I have a great deal of respect for DeWanna Witt and for others in law enforcement. I think in this particular instance, though, and particularly given the context of this uptick in violent crime in Minneapolis, it's a moment where people are focused on this as what they perceive as a very effective means of preventing crime. But when you look at the data, and why do we have access to data? So we can make better data-informed decisions. The data simply doesn't bear out what they're sharing. I understand that why law enforcement would see this as the continued use of these pretext stops is effective, because it at least gives them the opportunity to think about how those pretext stops might reduce crime, particularly in moments when people are calling for more officers and greater response times and so on and so forth. So how do we deal with crime? But when it's wrong, and when there's no evidence to bear out that that's ultimately been successful in reducing the level of crime, then you really have to have leaders in community, leaders in government, who make data-informed decisions. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I wish more people were familiar with the data from Ramsey County. I think if more people here in the Twin Cities in particular were familiar with the success that John Choi's office has had, they'd be less concerned and actually kind of leaning into Mary Moriarty saying, this is right now a good decision for our community. And with the memory, the recent memory of two controversial stops. So we think about Philando Castile, of course, but we also think about the killing
Dante Wright.
Of Dante Wright, Yeah. And so those are two very controversial killings that could have been avoided. And they would have made the community any less safe as a result of pursuing a different policy in those cases.
Yeah, and what you mean by that with Mr. Wright and Mr. Castile is if the stop had never happened, not the stuff that came after, if the stop that never happened. We don't have that
exactly.
result.
And there were other ways for the police in those particular cases to, if there were questions, to pursue.
I'm just going to stop it for a minute, because this is my belief in a lot of things when it came down to stops, or even with the police trying to do chases and everything. You see people who shouldn't be dead, and I know on here they talked about Philando Castile and Dante Wright, but what about Blessings? What about all the innocent people that have died because the police could have chose a different option that they already have? They could have used the cameras. They could have used, they already watch half the damn city anyways. You have people that probably, I'm going to be honest, you have people that probably sit in a room just watching cameras all day. I'm going to be honest. Somebody's got to be watching all these cameras you see everywhere. Like, do we really want to live in a state where, they don't really care about, public safety, but they make it look like it with, cameras everywhere or shot spotters. But when people call 911 and they need help, nobody comes. Especially if you live in Black and brown communities. The police, here's the thing of it is, and I understand it. So I understand for a reason that Mary Morary did this with the pretextual stops. It's because she is policy based, and I always said this, and I have since they did this little press conference or whatever, all the police chiefs. I said, look at that. Look who's not there. Brian O'Hara. Look what's crazy is, I think a lot of people would have been in more of an uproar just for the fact that you had Brian O'Hara there and his police department has a history of fucking over black and brown communities. So I'm not saying that he's like done it all, but he's got blood on his hands. He's not trying to, and I'm going to say trying because he's definitely out here lying to people. And I like O'Hara. I like Brian O'Hara as the man. I don't like the chief of police in Minneapolis. That there's a difference. I can look at Brian O'Hara and say he's a man, a human being, just like the rest of us, because he's the thing of it is when I look at law enforcement now, or even police chiefs, or they just took a different route. They had different opportunities, different choices than a lot of people made in America. Let's be honest. There's a lot, and I think that people think because they're a certain stature that it's not going to happen to them. That it won't sit there and harm their children, or it won't get to their kids. It will. I mean, I think about it just this morning. I was listening to the scanner out in Austin, and they had put out a protocol call of run, hide, or fight because they had an intruder on campus. And it's like, wait, what? So this is crazy to me because it's like, how do we, if they put out protocols like that, that should already be, if they put on an alarm, is to either run, hide, or fight, because most people are either going to run, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to hide, and there's not going to be many people who are going to sit there and fight and try to keep others safe. I don't know what kind of threat was out there. I know they were trying to get in some girl's apartment because she thought it was her roommate. So I mean, we're in crazy times. I mean, even just earlier too, you seen something come from the Department of War, which used to be the Department of Defense, has an urgent meeting with top generals because they had a Russian, I don't know if it was jets or some kind, they was in American airspace. So it's going to be a crazy ass Thursday. So just buckle up because it's, what is it, 10:30, not even 10:30 yet, and we're already in the hell of shit.
There are suspicions about those drivers that didn't involve those controversial stops. But ultimately, again, if we look at the numbers and if we look at the data, African Americans, people of color, 6.5 more times more likely to be stopped using pretext justification. The fact that often these end in encounters where these individuals are subjected to police violence, the loss of confidence in police as a result of this. The loss of police productivity around these pretext stops. I think all these are things that justify the decision that Hennepin County Attorney Mary Morty made last week. And again, I understand, particularly now, given the uptick in crime in Minneapolis, how people are feeling about this, but it doesn't change the data. And I wish people would lean into the data and recognize that the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, the Department of Justice, who shared those statistics, they're if you look at the numbers, they're not wrong. This isn't making us safer. This change makes us safer.
Right. In conversations, through conversation, we can have opinion and debate, but data is data.
Right.
You know, numbers are numbers.
Right.
And you mentioned some of it, so I want to give our viewers a chance to hear some of that data. You mentioned the U.S. Department of Justice and the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. They have that data because they studied the Minneapolis Police Department. Black drivers were 6.5 more times more likely to be stopped for minor infractions.
Right.
1.5 more likely to get a citation, 12.8 times more likely to have their vehicle searched, 9 times more likely to suffer violence at the hands of police. So those numbers are trending in the wrong direction, and it begins with what we're talking about as a pretext stop.
Absolutely. And those numbers are staggering when you consider, Janet, that's all unavoidable. That, again, these pretext stops are based on, in many instances, racial bias. I think the Philando Castile case is not an anomaly. He was stopped, as I mentioned in the article, the officers admitted later, for having a broad nose. So this was the, he fit the description or some kind of, of an imaginary criminal. And when you have policing practices like that, they are corrosive to community in 3 very substantive ways. They erode trust in the officers within communities that particularly are over-policed and underprotected, Black and brown communities. Number 2, they really take away from police resources, which can be allocated in other ways that can make all of us more safe. And number three, they place a burden on officers in some sense, to criminalize elements within the community, or to think about this in terms of, instead of a holistic model of public safety, numbers, generating numbers, generating arrests, generating citations, so on and so forth. That's not what public safety is all about. Public safety should be about these kind of broader issues that ultimately make everyone in community feel safer.
You bring up a point, and I know you never shy away when I ask you, person to person kind of stuff. So I'll just ask you. I can say, as a 48-year-old white person, I have never been stopped in a pretextual stop. You tell me, as a black man, you have.
Right.
And I need to listen to your experience, and you've heard mine. And so our experiences actually bore out in the data, right?
Absolutely. And I appreciate that, Jana, because often we say wounds produce narratives. And we don't listen to the wound that people have suffered in community.
Right.
And when we're not kind of dialed into what it means to have been the victim, and I use that language deliberately, it does feel like a violation of your civil rights, of your humanity, to be pulled over and to be questioned or interrogated simply because of the color of your skin. And when we're talking about low-level offenses here, and some of those pretexts that are used for the stops, it makes it worse, because what it does is promote this view that somehow communities of color warrant that suspicion. If we're ever going to move toward a larger society and culture where we value the dignity of all people, we certainly can't have this as one of the tools that officers use in policing our communities.
You deserve the best.
That's very true. Because it does, the pretextual stops has hurt Black and brown communities more than they could have ever hurt suburban, white, predominantly white areas, because they always felt like that's the one thing that I see with this delivery service stuff, right? Because I've delivered Amazon before, and in Brooklyn Center or whatever, and you go to areas where it's not very colored or not much diversity, and you're out of place. I shouldn't say that you feel out of place, you look out of place. And I think we're already judging people, and without even knowing them. You're judging somebody by the color of their skin, or they have an afro, or that's not right to me. And to me, and especially when people say, well, I got a black friend, then why do you say you people? Why do you say you people? How would somebody honestly take that when somebody is describing something, right? So you're hearing a white lady describe something that is going on, and she says, you people are always like this. What do you mean, you people? Why can't you clarify what you're saying? Because then it leaves me for open context. It leaves me open for what you're thinking. I don't want to judge you by what you're saying, and that's why I think a lot of people have Negrophobia, because they'll say they got that black friend, but yet here you are, not being racist, but to me, having a phobia, having a fear of something you can't understand, or you never had to walk through there. You never had to walk through that fire. That's why I don't understand when people tell me, like, y'all need to get over on that race shit. It's 2025. Okay. 1980 wasn't that long ago. My dad is still alive, and when he was a kid, there was white only and colored only. Come on now. Are we supposed to forget about that? Are we supposed to forget about people who are executed from the death penalty and who were innocent? And because our government doesn't see innocence as a reason to overturn a conviction, we're in a real state of issues. I mean, there's so many people sitting behind bars, and that's one thing that I did. I'm glad I brought that up, because they are meeting at 10:30 to discuss the closure of Stillwater Prison. The senators are. Now, I am going to cut to that in a little while, but I really want people to see that we really do have issues. We have problems. And if we don't have these tough ass conversations, we're not going to get to the bottom of it. We're not. Let's be honest. If people shy away from tough and hard conversations because either you don't want to listen, because either there's probably a multitude of reasons, but one, you can't understand that, or you have no understanding. And I get it. There's a lot of things out here in life that people are still, especially when it comes to older generation people, older people, and they're still set in their ways of, oh, there's only two genders. I get it. I say the same shit. God only created Adam and Eve. I don't really just say it, but that's what God said. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we can't change no matter how many amendments, no matter how much we try to make other people feel welcomed. We still have, there's still people here in this country who don't feel welcome, that are Americans. You know what I'm saying? And then we see these Democrats out here for people that, some of these people that shouldn't be here, because other countries don't leave their borders open like that. So why do we? And I know Trump is trying to build that wall or blah, 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 whatever, right? But that doesn't really stop shit. People will figure out ways. They've always have figured out ways of loopholes, or ways to figure out what works for them. So that's what I want people to understand. Even with you're going to see so much in the next couple of months, I believe, and indictments when it comes down to federal. I think you're going to see a lot of, and I think it's going to be November when you're going to see some politicians' names being arrested. Or I indicted, whatever you want to call it, because I do believe you're going to see that. I think if Omar Fattah wins to be the mayor of Minneapolis, I do think the federal government is going to come and arrest him, because his name's been brought up in too much with ballot harvesting, with feeding our future. And we, to be honest, we don't know how much really he had to do with not only just feeding our future, but the autism centers, the daycare. I already said autism, feeding our future, autism, daycare, violence interruption. Because there's a lot of shit going on, and I really think people need to stand up and be a part of something. Don't just fall for anything. Stand up for something. Because I see a lot of people in North Minneapolis that are just standing up for anything. And a lot of people in South Minneapolis too. They are standing for anything and not really standing for something. So that's why I believe this shit has allowed to happen, is because people don't stand for something. They stand for anything. And that's why I don't even like Mayor Marbury. I think she's a piece of, I won't say that, but I think she's not the best. To me, she has nigrophobia as well. So yes, she does go over into North Minneapolis, but it's not the same. And y'all think that, I seen something this morning off Taylor's X, is that Omar Fattah, the mosque or whatever, has been vandalized. And it's like, this shit's only going to get worse. Y'all think that y'all has seen something? We haven't seen nothing. Everybody thinks that because we saw George Floyd, we saw the uprising, we saw that the Target and the 3rd Police Department being set on fire. No, we're going to see a whole lot. I'm telling y'all, if the election goes the way that I think it's going to go, I think Minneapolis is in for a bunch of shit.
Dr. Williams, you know, when you had been pulled over for a stop like this, there is an adult person knows when they are being treated as suspicious. Is that what it felt like to you? Like you were a suspect in something and you were just driving your car?
Absolutely. The last time it happened to me, Jane, I was actually traveling to receive an award from my alma mater as a distinguished alumni in New Jersey, and I was pulled over for going too slow. And when I engaged with the officer, he asked me a series of questions. Where were my bags? I told him I was going to a reunion. He says, where are your bags? And I said, they're in the trunk. My wife was in the car. He said to her, who's she? So some of the things that we saw in the Minnesota Department of Human Rights report in Minneapolis around honorific. So treating me with a lack of dignity, not giving me the, asking me to explain things that, had nothing to do with why he was pulling me over. And then ultimately letting me go with a citation, a warning about driving too slow at 9:30 in the morning on a not busy highway. And this is an experience, again, that I think is replicated that you can find in conversations with communities of color, where people will share with you that this has been their experience. And this is really what I think Mary Moriarty, John Choi were trying to get at. There are better ways that officers can spend their time. If you look at the numbers, you realize that, again, as I indicated in the article, and I would encourage people to read that and to read the data that Mary Moriarty shared and to look at the data coming out of Ramsey County as well. It hasn't made those communities less safe. It has increased trust in the community. And that's really important right now.
Dr. Williams, I appreciate your time, your intellect. And
I think that is the one thing that is fracturing certain communities, is their trust in not only just law enforcement, but also groups, nonprofit groups, government. Because we've seen it over and over again, and it doesn't matter what color you are in this area, in this community. It's if you have stature, if you're seen as a poor person, as a second-class citizen, and that happens over and over and over and over again, and people still don't call it out. So here they had a group last night where Mary Mortery and Philando Castile's mom, Valerie, were at last night. And I wanted to show that it's only like 2 minutes long.
Rarely prosecuting cases stemming from low-level traffic stops. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty's new policy has been met with backlash from many law enforcement leaders. Today, Moriarty holding a community event about non-public safety traffic stops. Our So-Young Kim was at this discussion and joins me now. So-Young, what was the county attorney's message to those?
Randy, Moriarty explained what the new policy will and will not do. Says her goal is that it will increase community trust in law enforcement. Critics say it'll undermine public safety. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty says her new policy on non-public safety traffic stops is to address pretext stops.
I've actually heard squad video, body camera, where officers have said, hey, what should we pull this person over for? And they're very open about it, and by the way, it is legal.
Moriarty says this impacts things like expired tabs or broken taillights. Instead, she says limited resources should be focused on dangerous driving behaviors, including speeding and distracted driving. Moriarty says data shows these stops are racially discriminatory and aren't an efficient tool.
Minneapolis, and this was 2017, 2018, when they stopped a black driver and searched a black driver, they found a gun in less than half of 1% of the time.
Many law enforcement leaders have pushed back on this policy. Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association sent this statement that reads in part, quote, her new policy is a gift to criminals and a slap in the face to law-abiding Minnesotans. Guns, drugs, and fugitives discovered during traffic stops will now walk free, while officers are left powerless to act. And in response to those concerns mentioned in the statement, Moriarty made it clear there are exceptions when it's a matter of public safety and will be handled on a case-by-case basis. The new policy will take effect on October 15th. Live in studio tonight.
That shall be interesting. That shall be interesting. I think for a lot of, especially people in Minneapolis, Hennepin County, I think they are going to see, especially since, and I don't like John Choi either, but he already has done this. He stopped pretextual stops in Ramsey County, stopped charging for that. And if you do look at the data, in which they don't lie. They can be, see, here's the thing of it is, people say that numbers don't lie, but they can be screwed with. Data can be screwed. If they're not doing it right, it can be screwed with. And I think that's one thing that we do have to look at is how many pretextual stops are happening in Minneapolis that lead to bullshit ass charges where they could have just let that person go and instead they're pulling them over and trying to, because I think that's how Philando died. That's how Dante had died. That's how, there's so many others, and I won't even go on to just the pretextual, but I think Minneapolis and Hennepin County should have, if there's anywhere in the area, like if you're in city streets, especially in residential areas where people live, there's kids, I don't think we should be doing chases or any of that shit anymore. Not when we have drones, we have helicopters, and we have cameras at damn near every corner in Minneapolis. Let's be honest, because half the traffic corners, the stops have cameras on top. So they always know. That's like, I'm sure like Minneapolis Crime Watch. They watch and cameras. So they see, I'm not saying that they catch it, but they have that, just like law enforcement, they can back it up as well. Because if you pay for that service, the same thing with like the scanner, you can go back and listen and clip shit. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. And I can see why, because even listening to Austin this morning, listening to their scanner, it's like, if somebody's listening to that, the person is listening to that, they can obviously get away from the police if they're listening. So I understand why it should be private, but then why should it be private? Is it more risk of public safety for not people listening, or a bigger risk of public safety with people listening? That's what I don't understand. So I think it's one, it doesn't make MPD or Hennepin County look bad anymore because people aren't listening to the scanners. You can hear a lot of shit in Minneapolis on the scanners of how they were doing pretextual stops, or I mean, like just in St. Paul, I know this was years ago, but they stopped Philando because of his nose. They stopped Dante because of an air freshener. How many of us every day see somebody with air freshener in the mirror? And the police don't do nothing. So why it's because they had a black driver. And they can't say, oh, well, I know he had a warrant. You don't know that. You don't know if he had a warrant. The only reason, because you did a pretextual. You saw something. I got to do something. He got an air freshener in the window, or his tabs. Come on, man. I think that is such a bullshit ass way to be trying to do public safety, because in my eyes, that's how much we've seen bullshit in Minneapolis. I'll be honest.
High-end amenities, gourmet kitchens, spas, and sky lounges. Apartments like these rent for thousands of dollars a month. Unless, of course, you're getting them for free. Lou Raguse shows us how one man allegedly bounced from luxury apartment to luxury apartment for years without paying rent, and why some believe recent changes in the law make it harder to stop.
This is a condo that I have here in St. Louis Park.
Josh Van Valkenburg bought this 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo to be closer to his son Landon.
This was close to his schools and everything, so giving me a place to come to and spend time with him.
When the boy and his mom moved from the St. Louis Park area, rather than sell the condo, Josh decided to rent it out for extra income to help him pay for a new place.
So I could still be close to him.
He listed it on Zillow and found what seemed to be a good tenant, Darian Hoskins.
Really liked this individual and, had a good feeling about him, so,
In December, Hoskins wrote on his application that he made $8,500 a month, had rented twice before, and, quote, always treats everything with care. But the first red flag raised for Josh as soon as Hoskins paid the deposit and moved in.
We had got a screenshot of his deposit being paid through Zillow, because we were running everything through their platform for rental deposits, monthly rent and everything. And then he moved in immediately the next day. All of a sudden, things were being reversed.
The pending transaction canceled, the money gone, and the months began to go by without Hoskins paying his rent.
6 months. Sounds crazy. 6 months, no money.
This is the worst I've ever seen this. Josh hired attorney John Braun to file an eviction, a process that takes more time than ever before in Hennepin County, thanks to laws passed to help tenants. Laws that John believes Hoskins is exploiting.
Did the legislature create a scenario where a tenant can live rent-free by gaming the system?
Absolutely. Not forever, but for a while.
For example, John says something as small as a clerical error in eviction filings can now derail a case for months, buying more time for the tenant. Regarding Hoskins, court records show that over the last several years, he's been hopping from apartment to apartment, far more than the 2 rentals he cited on his application. Just since January 2023, the Westlake Tower in Uptown, the Cortland and Addition apartments in downtown Minneapolis, and the Maverick over in the North Loop, all luxury apartments where Hoskins lived, failed to pay rent, and was evicted before moving into Josh's more modest condo.
He gets evicted sometimes every 4 months. In 2023, he was evicted 3 times. So he stays there long enough for them to figure out they've been duped and takes off. We're talking nearly $100,000 over 4 years.
Living rent-free.
Living rent-free.
One new law requires eviction cases to be wiped from someone's record if they voluntarily move out. That's what now sealed records show happened last year after Hoskins lived at another luxury apartment, the Quentin in St. Louis Park, for 4 months. In an earlier eviction case, Hoskins extended his stay with these handwritten filings, claiming the dollar figures claimed by the landlord were incorrect. And last summer, Hoskins filed for bankruptcy, a one-time process that froze all ongoing legal processes and wiped away all the money he was previously ordered by judges to pay, not just to former landlords, but tens of thousands of dollars to friends and significant others who sued, saying Hoskins took their money.
It's clever. He can't do it again. Would have bought him 8 months, bought him 20 grand.
When Josh's case began, Hoskins received taxpayer-funded legal representation from Hennepin County Adult Representation Services, despite supposedly making $102,000 a year at, get this, a nonprofit that helps people in need find housing.
So he should be able to afford a lawyer?
He should be able to afford a lawyer.
Hennepin County ARS withdrew after John brought Hoskins' salary to the judge's attention. Months into his free stay at Josh's condo, with continued delays in the eviction case, I caught up with Hoskins.
Hi, Darian. I'm Lou Ragoose with Care 11 News. I'm wondering why you haven't been paying rent at this apartment or at any apartment you lived at in the last couple of years.
I have.
You have been paying rent?
After this exchange, Hoskins claimed by text to be actively figuring out payment plans, something Josh says never happened.
Yeah, I mean, he played the game all the way to the end.
Finally, 6 months and 15 grand down the drain, Josh got his condo back. But he has no plans to look for a new tenant.
I'm going to sell it.
Why?
I don't want to have to go through what I've been going through again.
Darian Hoskins no longer works for that housing nonprofit. His former boss telling me his annual salary was actually $76,000, not the $102,000 he put on his housing application. She also told me Hoskins claimed to have an MBA in business administration from the U of M, but the U told me they have no record of him ever attending. Regarding the free legal services Hoskins received for a time, a Hennepin County spokesperson told me, quote, there is no bulletproof method of verification when it comes to financial eligibility. I met with Hoskins again last week, but he chose not to comment on the record for this story. Rena.
It's infuriating. Will Josh be able to get any of his money back?
So eviction cases have nothing to do with repayment of money. They just have to do with getting the person out of the place. But Josh has filed a separate lawsuit in hopes of getting a judgment against Hoskins.
Oh, good luck with that, right? And so if you're renting a place to somebody, how do you avoid this happening to you?
So like a landlord like Josh, just somebody that has this extra property he's trying to rent out, he relied on Zillow, which offers background checks. Those background checks, they did show one eviction, and he was not going to hold that against him.
Yeah.
It turns out there was way more evictions. The tip is to go to the courthouse and actually look through the computers there. And it is a pain.
Yeah.
But that would have shown him what Hoskins' background really was. The Zillow background check did not show any of that.
Damn. That's crazy. That actually makes me think, what did they know, or what did they, wow. I will say our eviction here in Minnesota, it's an issue. We have a big issue with our eviction laws in the courts here in Minnesota. And a lot of people don't want to look at that, but I think it does need to be fixed because it leaves open for scammers to be, and people who just wish to be fraudulent, to get over on people who the laws and the government should be caring for people who are law-abiding citizens, and it really makes me sad that our police departments, our courts, our judicial system, it sees two types of justices, one for, white people, and one for black. Because I know something's definitely going to happen in the other lawsuit. Because, Hoskins is in for some shit. So next I want to talk about is a Minnesota sheriff blasted Keith Ellison. And so it had to do with ICE. And I want to, especially since that happened yesterday in the ICE facility in Dallas, should we in Minnesota be working with immigration and ICE to be able to, for public safety? And I honestly think, yes, we should, because here's my thing of it is, right? One's not better than the other. They're all the same. So why don't they all want to work together? And I understand that each state has different laws, but we shouldn't. Every state should have all same laws, all same, but it's not that way. And we've allowed people to fuck us over. We're a state that I think we have almost 20 people that were not born in America in politics in Minnesota. And I can see the same way as California why we're so shitty like that. It's because we're allowing people who shouldn't even. Here's my thing of it is we should honestly go by the Constitution and change some shit, because you shouldn't be able to run for politics if you were not born in this country. If your parents were not born in this country, you should not be sitting here making laws, because this is not your land. And that's what I know people are going to say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Yes, it does. Why? Okay, if that doesn't make any sense, why don't they go back to Somalia, Ethiopia? And I know people will say, oh, well, there's a civil war going on over there. Not like there's a war. Are you really serious? How much are in the news is Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Gaza, or I shouldn't even say Gaza, but Palestinians. Like, come on. We see war every day. We see war in our streets. We see wars in our politics, because I will tell you like this, is that we have a history in America of killing people who we don't agree with. No matter if it's been our own fucking government or it's been people like us who have been our friends, or why can't we ever face that? Because it all comes down to people who want to do right and people who want to do wrong. Let's be honest. There's too many people who are doing wrong because other people have told them that it was right. Let's be honest. And that's the way that our politics, no matter if it comes back to kickbacks, donations, we literally have people who have gotten rich off the government fraudulently. Didn't matter if it came down to Medicaid, COVID funds, unemployment, PPP loans. Didn't matter if they were white. Didn't matter if they were poor blacks. Didn't matter if they were immigrants from other countries. Our systems were rampant with fraud. And not a lot of people said nothing. They looked the other way because they didn't want to. It's still that way. They don't want to bite the hand that feeds them.
Minnesota's Attorney General pushes back on a plan that would allow sheriffs to cooperate with ICE. Meet the Minnesota sheriff ignoring the warning and taking a stand for law and order. Next. Mille Lacs County Sheriff Kyle Burton is my guest. Sheriff, always good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, thank you for your service.
You too, Liz. Thanks for having me on.
You know, you're one of 7 sheriffs in Minnesota to enter into what's called the 287G program, which allows your agency to assist with Immigration Customs Enforcement, or ICE, in identifying people for arrest and potential deportation. It's a program I know that's been around for a long time, about 30 years. It seems in Minnesota, though, almost very necessary now, since our Attorney General Keith Ellison says that under state law enforcement agencies cannot hold someone on an immigration detainer alone. Now I understand he's digging his heels in to say that this 287G program also violates state law. But tell us about this recent letter you received from the Attorney General and why you entered into this program months ago.
So the letter came Friday. the reason that we joined the task force, or that I felt it was necessary for us to do that, if nothing else, it's a deterrent, I think, because if there are, violent criminal illegal aliens that are perhaps intent on setting up shop here in my county to do nefarious things, perhaps the fact that we've got 14 287G task force officers in a small county like this would be a deterrent to maybe not do so. For me, it's about being prepared. And, I think failing to prepare is preparing to fail. I've always said that. And so for us, it was more just preparation. And anything we can do to partner with our federal partners to make the county safer, I think is a good thing.
So there are 3 types of 287G agreements that you can enter into. You're in what's called the task force model. Explain how that works.
Yeah, so you have three agreements you can enter into. You've got a jail model, which mostly involves detaining of folks that are here illegally. You've got a warrant officer model, and then you have the task force model, which is what we're in, and that's more of a collaboration between us and ICE agents. It allows us to go out in the field and assist them in apprehending certain individuals who they've deemed to be kind of the most dangerous. And you've heard, I'm sure, representatives from DHS talk about our priority right now is the worst first, as far as how to tackle this problem we have in this country of the amount of people that are here illegally. And certainly the worst first would be those who are here not only illegally, but have also committed, violent or heinous crimes while they're in the country illegally.
Sheriff, we were able to accompany ICE on a recent ride along. You could clearly see how these partnerships are so valuable. In many states, there is that cooperation, not the case in Minnesota, but you could see how these agents are basically then forced out into the field, whether it's homes or businesses, rather than just doing a pickup from the local jail. You have to kind of wonder that this is our Attorney General in Minnesota, our top law enforcement officer. I mean, that's what the Attorney General of any state is. So why would they be against something like this that really centers around safety?
That's a great question. And, I think it's the Attorney General and the Governor of Minnesota have both been very much opposed to the president's stance on illegal immigration, cracking down on border security. I mean, our governor has been quoted publicly referring to, ICE agents as the Gestapo.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense, not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye, just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into those vans, and disappeared.
So, when you have that kind of rhetoric being said by top-level officials such as the governor and now the Attorney General, who is clearly not in support of this program, it's troubling. I mean, their political party, they're both Democrats, that's no secret, has very much not been in support of the current administration's efforts to secure the country. And the reality is the vast majority of America voted for this. So why they're opposed to it or why they want to seem to throw up roadblocks, I don't understand it.
So you're planning to push forward, ignore this warning, I guess. In that letter, the Attorney General says he plans to issue a formal opinion in the coming weeks that the 287G agreements quote, do not comply with the Joint Exercise of Powers Act, and they're null and void. So how do you see this resolving itself?
NFC West rivals face off. Seahawks, Cardinals, tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on Prime.
If you live in a Minnesota zip code and have 0 DUIs in the last 5 years, listen carefully.
It's a good question. His letter is sort of twofold. So he specifically says that it's his opinion that the 287G agreement that I entered into is not valid because the Mille Lacs County Board of Commissioners did not also sign on to it. So that's kind of the first part of his letter. I disagree with that. There's a statute in Minnesota, Chapter 387.03, which talks about the authority given to the sheriff by statute, and it gives the sheriff very broad authority under that to basically do whatever the sheriff deems necessary to keep and preserve the peace of the county. So I disagree that I don't have the authority to enter into the agreement without the signature of the county board. And then he goes on to say that even if you do enter into an agreement with the county board's authorization, he still says it's against Minnesota law to detain somebody solely based on a civil ICE detainer alone. And again, that's not the focus. I mean, if you talk to the folks at DHS, that's not their mission set right now necessarily either. They're going after the worst first. Again, those dangerous individuals that I spoke about earlier. You know, and we're not seeking to go out and detain people unless they have, you know, warrants that actually have a judge's signature on them. That's what our focus is going to be here. Obviously, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, and the letter, you know, the Attorney General can render whatever opinion he wishes. I mean, everybody has the right to their opinion, I suppose, but I would much rather see him making better use of not only his time but our taxpayer dollars than wasting time sending a letter. And to be frank, he didn't even send the letter directly to me. He had an assistant do it. He didn't even contact me directly, which is kind of disappointing. You know, police chiefs and sheriffs. You saw Sheriff Witt, my friend in Hennepin County, the other day, publicly talking about this reckless policy that's latest nonsense to come out of the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, where she's not going to prosecute felony crimes from low-level traffic stops. It would have been awesome to see the Attorney General publicly denouncing that policy, but he was nowhere to be found on that. You know, he wasn't anywhere to be found a few months ago when myself and the other sheriffs were down at the Capitol begging the legislature to commit funding for more mental health facilities so that we don't have people in our jails who are mentally ill that do not belong in jail in there. We want them in the appropriate facility. Keith Ellison was nowhere to be found on that either. And so instead, he seems to want to spend his time writing letters like this, you know, or beating his chest at a vigil for a recent active shooter incident that happened in Minneapolis that he's suing Glock. I think there's way better things he could be spending his time on than things like this.
And I think your opinion is shared by many, Sheriff. Again, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
That is true, you know, and I think that half of Minnesota wants I will say this, that when it comes down to dealing with ICE and all those things, I'll say it like this. We've already seen our government, our police departments fucking over black and brown communities. So why not allow this? I want to ask a serious question, because I see a lot of people who are in their feelings about this, about ICE. And I ask why, because I have people in my country, people in my family whose parents weren't born in this country. My youngest son's mom wasn't born in this country. Otis's mom. So does that make it that I want, you know, so it really toys with my thinking sometimes. Do I want this? But then I see, yes, I do want it. Because I can see in my communities who's doing the fraudulent, who's doing the wasteful, because there was more money sent to Kenya than they actually put out here in these streets to help people, who they were giving that money to help. That wasn't money for them to just live lavishly so they could live better than everybody else. No, that was money so they can make our communities, our areas different. And that's not what happened. That's nowhere near what happened. I want to show you, I saw this morning in Minneapolis City Council, they're going to approve 35 contracts. It's on the consent decree. So unless somebody brings it up to talk, they will not be talking about this. But there's 35 to do violence interruption services, right? So you have a contract for a more proprio for 3 years. They're all 3-year contracts, but they're different. They all go from August 1st to July 31st, 2028. And that's $100,000 to a more proprio. Art is my weapon gets $100,000. Not to exceed $100,000. So that's why I say at least 100. Change starts with community. They get 100,000. And Visualize gets 100,000. Foundation Elevation LLC gets $100,000. Global and Entrepreneur. I hate that. Sometimes I can't get my words right. Global Entrepreneurship Week, Minnesota gets $100,000, $170,000 for Goodwill. $3 million for Hennepin Healthcare. Contract with Hired for, I don't know who that is. That's $100,000. And Genuous Protector Movement, they get $100,000. Jordan Area Community, $100,000. Keeping My Focus, another $100,000. Lake Street Council, $100,000. Legal Rights Center, $100,000. And these are all for, I just want people to know that they are for violence prevention services. So mentoring partnership of Minnesota, $100,000. Metro Youth Diversion Center, $100,000. Downtown District Improvement District, $100,000. My Pitbull is Family, $100,000. Nonviolent Peace Force, $100,000. Out Front Minnesota Community Services, $100,000. $600,000 for Pillsbury United Communities. Resource Justice Management gets $100,000. $100,000 to Rise Beyond Hate. Sabathany, $100,000. She Cares, $600,000. Consulting. Now, this one I'm going to look at because the Consulting LLC, that's not a nonprofit. So that's crazy to me. Somali Community Resettlement Services, $100,000. We shouldn't be giving them any, no matter to it's the Somali Youth Link. We should not be giving them no money, but of course, $100,000. St. David Center for Youth and Family Development, $100,000. Steps to Strategy for 3 years, $100,000. The Man Up Club, $100,000. Trajectory Changing Solutions, $100,000. And Tubman, $600,000. We Win Institute, $100,000. West Bank Business Association, $100,000. Now, I wanted to remind people, these are all for violence prevention services. Don't get it twisted. So this is their consent decree. Their consent, not decree, agenda. See? Standing committees, gift of acceptance. I think they already did that. Committee reports. Yeah, so unless it's actually brought up, they won't talk about it. But then you have the same thing going on with the Minnesota Senators. They're talking about MCF Stillwater phase closure and update. So they're hoping that October 1st, that's what I wanted to show something real quick when it came to this. Because it's like people, I think, you're going to see really shocked that there's not many. Yeah, here it goes. That by October 1st, so what's today? The 25th? Yeah. So in less than a week, you're going to have the Stillwater population reduction by 50%. So before October 1st, they would have had 1,189 inmates. Now they won't. They'll have 553, right? So that means all these other places are going on. So all these other prisons, but it's nice to see that. I will say that I did when I looked at this, I seen the prison population had really, really gone down the last couple of years. So, I mean, I did look at that number. At one point, they were over 12,000 inmates, and now they only have 8. So they are way under, but that's the new facility capacity will be 553. Damn, and they want to be down to incarcerated persons, 487. That's crazy. I don't know how much. Look, here goes the list. 2012, but I mean, that 2014, there was almost 11,000. And they've always been, the last couple of years, 20. But then, okay, so you look at this, right? I want to sell something. if you look at this right here, their population the last couple of years since 2012, right? Look at the years 2020 and beyond. They're way under. Way under. Look at that. Last year, 2020, or 2 years ago, 2021. I wonder how it's going to be this year in 2025. Because look at this. They had more work release people in 2014. They were all over these numbers since COVID. Before COVID, we were always either at 10,000 or over 10,000. To me, that's crazy. The capacity, why are we under the capacity? Because we are letting off a lot of criminals that should be behind bars, and instead we're just letting them go. That's crazy to me. I will never understand that. Hold on, I want to get to the judiciary.
What does the future look like for Minnesota's prison system? And how do we not get into a position where we have really serious infrastructure challenges at St. Cloud, and that we're in a position where we're going to be forced to do something. So to really be mindful about the future,
right?
We are looking at dusting off and intend to at some point bring forward proposals around some capacity expansion in the system, so that there is a level of readiness, whether that conversation about St. Cloud happens in 4 years or 10 years, at least the state is in a position to be able to manage capacity and do so safely and with more modern infrastructure.
Chair, follow up.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did I hear you right that the bonding request is going to be in conjunction with what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, a potential closure of the St. Cloud facility at some point in the future? Is that, do you have any plans, either short-term or long-term, to close the St. Cloud facility?
Commissioner Schnell.
Mr. Chair, Senator Kroon, no. That has, again, I would go back to how I started. The OLA report recommended that the Minnesota legislature begin to plan for the replacement or upgrading of these two facilities. This is really about being proactive and ready to act, because I think the OLA's assessment was pretty comprehensive and very clear.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kind of wrap this together. I know you said that the 50-bed contract with Washington County Jail had to do with transfer challenges and not necessarily capacity issues of itself. And now I'm hearing that the bonding request is long-term. It seems to me, just my general comment here, is that's putting the cart before the horse. I mean, it seems to me we should have had these bonding requests and long-term expansion plans discussion before we close Stillwater. That's just my commentary. But my final question for now is, I understand, like you said, this is a challenge with transfer requests, which I don't fully understand how that's independent from capacity issues. But if county jail space is needed now,
been out there,
and we're only a few months into this closure process, and there's still, I believe you said 400 some inmates in Stillwater currently right now.
So yeah, there's maybe, I think it is over 400 plus. I think, like I said, 473 people that are in Stillwater prison. But they were talking about the fact if they were going to close St. Cloud, the OLA, and I'll probably talk about that tomorrow, because I know she did give out a report, and I know a lot of people, maybe they did look at it or they didn't, but they really should. This morning, it was discovered, or he posted about it, Omar Fattah, that his mosque and his campaign office had been vandalized with hate speech.
The campaign office of Minneapolis mayoral candidate Omar Fattah says it was vandalized with a seemingly threatening message. According to Fattah's campaign, the office was vandalized with a message saying, quote, Somali Muslim, this warning is no joke. The campaign filed a police report on Wednesday. In a statement, Senator Fattah said that our campaign will not be deterred by hate speech and vandalism. We will not back down to Islamophobia. I will not be bullied or intimidated. The people of Minneapolis are demanding change, and I will continue fighting for it. My team and I are dedicated to continuing to connect with Minneapolis residents and winning this election. We will not be stopped. And we have reached out to police for more details on the case.
So, yeah, he did post about that his office. And it's crazy because they're asking for money. That's what I really, really don't understand is like things happen, especially if you're calling it hate speech, but then you're asking for money. That's really fucking crazy to me, right? This week, our campaign office was vandalized. Oh, let me share it. I'm not sharing. Get it right there. This week, our campaign office was vandalized with an Islamic threat. We will not be deterred by hate speech. The people of Minneapolis are demanding change, and I'll continue fighting for it. We're still going to win the election. Now, it's crazy to me that the last mayor run I was a part of. I shouldn't say I was a part of because I did see it happen, but I worked with Jarrell Perry and Paul Johnson because they were running for mayor. And Jarrell Perry, who's a black man, had Minneapolis would never have a nigger mayor was written on the side of his house where he lived at. And I think it's crazy that you're inside sleeping and you don't hear your house being spray painted. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't, and that was a kind of a big property, but I know he definitely didn't ask for money like Omar is. The campaign filed a police report on Wednesday. We will not be bullied or intimidated. This comes after an increased violence, right-wing threats fueled by conservative media outlets and figureheads. I see, and I don't really understand that, right? Like, I understand that Minnesota or Minneapolis wants change, but I honestly don't believe they want that Omar Fattah change. I will say that. There is not a lot of people in Minneapolis that want Omar. They'll say it, they do. That's because they want to win, but they do not want the Omar Fattah candidacy being mayor. I will say this. You do not want, no matter how much they say they do, Minneapolis does not want what do you say? I want a socialist mayor. And I know a lot of people think that they do, but they don't. And I think that we really need to realize that elections have consequences and to get ready for them, because you're going to see a lot of consequences to people's actions, to their behaviors that we really didn't see in the last, I would say, like 5 years. We're going to see, I believe, so much is going to be happening, and people are going to be like, wait, that was going on? Damn, no wonder why we didn't see no change, because everybody was trying to get the money. Everybody was trying to get paid because they said they were working for the community. You know what was crazy? Look at the housing services, right? And how they said they were working for people to get them housing, but that's not the way that it was. So I'm going to get up out of here. I won't be here tomorrow. I have an appointment, occupational therapy. I might end up doing an episode later on that day, but tomorrow. But I'm going to get up out of here, and if you don't see me tomorrow, I'll be back Monday. And just know that we need each other, and I don't care if we are. I'm not going to say we're divided, because we're not. We're not divided at all. But we are a country that is not united. We're not united at all. And we're split down. can't even say the middle anymore, because I think there's so many different avenues or different labels that people are and that we really are. So I'm going to get up out of here. I'll see y'all Monday. Here is PZ, City is Mine, and I will see y'all Monday or even tomorrow.
Fuel's got that heat.
Fucking time, they gon' vanish. Peoples I fuck with was speaking down, saying I read it. Ain't told on the soul, check the papers, it's public record. Cashed out my lawyer, don't do the public defenders. And did it on my own, ain't nobody gave me a nickel. Took my last 15,000 and made it triple. And did that shit 5 more times, now I'm the nigga. Stand 10 toes, I was raised on that. Street report card, I got all A's on that. I was in too deep to where I can't fall back. Switch to hustle, nigga, now I'm getting paid off rap. Niggas lying in they songs, I just stayed off fact. Stick, I call my nigga phone and he can't call back. Used to middleman chickens and they ain't all hats. Only chickens niggas know it's 6-piece all flats.
I'm a lot of niggas talk about them murders, but ain't kill nothing. I'm the one with money, but that pressure on them still coming. Ain't letting them live, I'm trying to make these niggas feel something. Hop out on them, get the drive done while the car still running. I don't know why I'm entertaining a nigga that ain't seen 100. When that money come, they start hating, so I been seeing it coming. Make a nigga stand, fuck that fire, leave his blood running. I ain't saying a word, I stand on business when the judge coming. My little nigga told me pay the back, but I ain't ducking nothing. Drop a bag, know I can get him smacked for a little bit of nothing.